بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويسألونك عن الأهلة قل هي مواقيت للناس. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the most important topics of Islamic law is the topic of the Islamic lunar month and when the Islamic month begins. As that you find that this subject has a great effect on our timed ibadat, our timed worships, like fasting, for example. If I want to fast, I have to fast from the first day of Ramadan. So I have to first understand and know when Ramadan begins. And we stop fasting the day of Eid, which is the first day of the following month, the first day of Shawwal. So I have to know when Shawwal begins. And likewise, when we perform Hajj, we have to do Hajj on the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah. That's when we go to Arafah. So I have to, in order to perform a correct Hajj, I have to know when Dhul Hijjah begins. And you find this topic, the topic of the Islamic lunar month, is a controversial topic. It's a topic of much confusion, and it's a topic of much misunderstanding. You find many people, they accuse of Islam, and especially the ulama, specifically the ulama, they accuse them of being backwards. You find this in many communities, many of us. When the day of Eid comes, when the Eid approaches, people begin to lose patience. Now we fasted for 27 days, for 28 days, for 29 days. They don't want to fast an additional day. They want Eid to be the first day. They don't want it to be the second possible day. They want it to be the first possible day. So what do? They start to attack the ulama. That these ulama are so backwards. They're still using archaic old methods from the Stone Ages. Now in this era of technology and science, they still have to rely on witnesses. They have to actually go out and see them in order for the next month to be proven. So you find there's lots of chaos, lots of controversy about this topic. And that's why tonight we'll take these few minutes that we have to try to clear some of those misconceptions and explain how the Islamic lunar calendar works, so that we could try to better understand before we accuse the ulama, before we point fingers, before we try and act as if we are more knowledgeable than the ulama. We have to take these points into consideration. So there's 4 questions that we will try to answer. Question number 1, when does the Islamic lunar month technically begin? Number 2, can we rely on science to determine the beginning of the month? Number 3, if the ulama disagree on the day of Eid, does that mean that they don't trust each other? And number 4, what's the solution if the ulama disagree on the day of Eid? So we begin with the first question. When does the Islamic lunar month technically begin? In some non-Islamic lunar calendars, the month begins with the new moon. When the new moon is born, the new lunar month begins. And to better understand this, we have to first briefly explain what the new moon is and when that happens. This is astronomy. So, as you know, the moon orbits around the earth. It goes around the earth. And the farther away the moon goes from the direction of the sun, the bigger we see it, the brighter we see it. The farther it goes away, the bigger it becomes until it becomes a full moon. And the closer it goes towards the direction of the sun, the smaller we see it, until it becomes a tiny crescent. So as the moon is orbiting, as it goes closer and closer towards the sun, it reaches a point in which it becomes in a straight, direct line between Earth and the sun. So if you draw a straight line, first Earth, then the moon, then the sun. The moon is perfectly in between the Earth and the sun. When that point happens, as it's, let's say the Earth is here, the sun is here, as it's orbiting around the Earth, and it falls on that perfect line that astronomers call the point of conjunction. When that happens, this is when we have the new moon. This is when the new moon is born. And at this moment, when the moon is lined up between Earth and the sun, we can't see the moon. Not because our eyes are sharp enough. Even if you use the most powerful telescope in the world, you won't be able to see any part of the moon. Why? Because there's nothing to see. There's no light being reflected. We know the moon has no light. How do we see it? It's the light of the sun that's reflecting. The sun is behind it. So all the light is being reflected towards the sun. No light is being reflected towards us. So it's pitch black, dark. So at that point, when there's a new moon, we can't see the moon at all. Because it's black. There's no light to see it. So does the new moon begin here? Does the new month begin with the new moon? No. I said in non-Islamic calendars, some of the lunar non-Islamic calendars, they consider the new moon as the beginning of the new month. But in Islam, the new moon doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean the new month began. So when does the new month begin? Now, if you just keep this point in mind, that the new moon doesn't mean the new month began, many of the misconceptions that we have about the scholars will be cleared. And I'll explain in a few minutes. So when does the Islamic month begin then, if it's not the new moon? Now, the moon is between the sun and the earth. It's going that way. As soon as it begins to drift away again from the sun, we can't see it, there's no light. So it begins to drift away until finally some light begins to reflect towards earth. Some light of the moon, of the crescent, begins to become visible in this world. The very first second that the light of the moon is visible for us, the people of the world, of this earth, that's when the new month begins. This is when I can say tomorrow is Eid. Tomorrow is the first day of Ramadan, the first day of the Hajjah, the first day of any month. So it's not the new moon, it's the visibility of the moon. And this, I'll speak about this in a few minutes, this takes at least 10 to 20 hours after the new moon. So when the new moon is born, we can't see anything. It's not the new month. We have to wait at least 20 hours until we can consider that tomorrow is Eid or the first day of Ramadan. We have to wait for the visibility of the moon. Now, you might ask here that why? Why isn't the new moon not the beginning of the month? Why do we have to wait until it's visible? And that takes an additional 20 hours. Why can't we consider the new moon the beginning of the month? Well, the ulama, they mention many proofs. They have many proofs that serves as evidence to why we cannot consider the new moon as the beginning of the month. But I'll only mention two. One from the Quran and one from the Hadith. So the first piece of evidence that the ulama use to prove that the new moon does not mean that the new month has begun is this verse that we began our lecture with. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ. The Holy Quran says, and they ask you, Ya Rasulullah, about the ahillah, about the crescent, about the moon, about the phases of the moon. They ask you, Ya Rasulullah, why is there the moon phases? What's the wisdom behind that? Why does the moon change in shape and size and we see it in different sizes all the time? What's the point of that? What's the purpose of that? What's the wisdom behind that? Allah tells the Holy Prophet, قُلْ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ, say, هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. Tell them that the moon, the crescent, serves as, they are signs of fixed periods. Or in other words, the moon serves as a calendar to us. Now, if we want to better understand how the moon serves as a calendar, we have to first explain another point. And that point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we know, He based the Islamic calendar on the lunar calendar, not on the solar calendar. We have the solar calendar, which is the Gregorian one, the one that we use, 2013, that's based on the sun. And we have the lunar calendar, which is the Islamic calendar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't choose the solar calendar to be the basis of Islam. He chose the lunar calendar. Why? The ulama say there's wisdom behind that. Allah didn't choose the solar calendar on purpose. Even though if you notice, the solar calendar is much more accurate than the lunar calendar. You could predict every day what will happen, what will spring be, when will winter be, when will everything be, from now to probably 1,000 years with accuracy. But with the lunar calendar, you can't be too accurate about it. So why didn't Allah choose the solar calendar to begin with? The ulama, they say there's wisdom behind that. The ulama say that it appears that Allah chose the lunar calendar instead of the solar calendar because the lunar calendar is very easy to follow. Even if I'm a desert dweller, a nomad that doesn't know anything, that lives by myself in the desert, I'm disconnected from the world, I can tell each night which night of the month it is. How? I just go outside, out of my tent, I look at the moon. Based on the size of the moon, I can tell what day it is. If I see it's a full moon, I know it's probably night 14, night 15, night 16. It's towards the middle. If I see there's no moon, I know it's towards the end of the month or the beginning of the next month. And basically, based on the size of the crescent, I could tell what night out of the month it is. But the solar calendar, if I ask you what day out of the month it is, without looking at your iPhone, at your planner, at your calendar, can you tell me by looking at the sun what day out of the calendar it is? Of course not. Unless you're an astronomer. Yes, if you're a scientist, astronomer, maybe. But for an average person like you and me, we can't tell. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the lunar calendar so that everyone can tell what night it is, so that we wouldn't need the astronomers. He made life simple. And everything in our ibadat are like this. When do I have to pray? Salatul Dhuhr. It's at noontime. How do I know noontime? I don't have to go look at the paper. There's a way I can tell. Anyone can tell. Some of us don't know because we rely on those papers that they give in the Islamic centers. But there is a way that we could tell Maghrib time, Fajr time, Dhuhr time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to rely on ourselves. It's an easy religion. You don't need astronomers. You don't need a calendar. You don't need anything. Even if you live by yourself in the Arctic Ocean, you can tell what night it is. So this is the philosophy behind choosing the lunar calendar to begin with. Now, the ulama use this point to prove that it is not enough to prove the next month based on the new moon. We can't rely on the new moon. The new moon means nothing. Why? They say, why did God choose the lunar calendar to begin with? Because it's easy, so we wouldn't need astronomers. Now I ask you, can you and I determine when the new moon takes place? Yes or no? Can anyone here tell me, without going to the websites, without relying on technology, can you tell me when the new moon will happen? Of course not. You need science. You need technology to decide that. So if Allah says, use the lunar calendar because it's easy, so you won't need astronomers, and then He says, how do I know? You ask, how do I know when the next month is? Allah tells you, it's the new moon. You're going to need the astronomers. You're going to tell Allah, I don't know how to tell when the new moon is. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He tells us the new moon is the beginning of the next month, we would have to go back to you, the astronomers and technology. So it would defeat the initial purpose of choosing the new lunar month to begin with. Allah should have just chosen the solar month if He wanted us to use the technology and science. Allah wanted life to be easy. And the new moon, deciding when the new moon takes place, this is only the job of the astronomers. So God told us the lunar calendar because it's easy. The new moon is not something easy. So that's why the ulama say, we understand from this verse, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. Tell them that the moon serves as a calendar to everybody, not just for the astronomers. So we find out, because the new moon is not the job of you and I, an average person, the new moon cannot be the beginning of the new Islamic month. It has to be something else that every single one of us can tell. What would that something else be? The ulama say that something else that determines the beginning of the next month is the visibility of the moon. When the moon becomes visible to our eyes, when it reaches a stage in which the light of the moon reaches earth. And this is something anyone could tell. Just go and look. If you see it, it's the next month. If you don't see it, then the next day will be the next month, not tomorrow. So this is the first proof why we cannot rely on the new moon. All the ulama agree on this. The new moon means nothing. The moon has to reach a stage in which it is visible by the eye or the telescope. I'll speak about that in a few minutes, the disagreement between the ulama about that topic. But they all agree that the new moon is not enough. So this is the first proof from the Quran. The second proof, why the ulama say that the new moon is not enough. They rely and refer to a bunch of ahadith from Ahlul Bayt. And it's narrated from many imams. They come, the people, to the imams and they ask them this question. It's the 29th day of Sha'ban. Tomorrow is either 30 Sha'ban or it's 1 Ramadan. Because as we know, the lunar month could either be 29 days or 30 days. Depends on the sighting of the moon. So they come and they ask the imams, what do we do tomorrow? Do we fast with the intention of Ramadan? Or no, tomorrow is the last day of Sha'ban. Nobody saw the moon. The imams used to always give one answer. They repeated it many times, the same answer. What did they say? The hadith says from the imams, Sum lil-ru'ya. They used to tell those people that you fast the next day, you consider it Ramadan if you see the moon. If the crescent is visible. If nobody sees it, then you guys don't fast. You could fast tomorrow with the intention of mustahab, with the intention of ihtiyat, precautionary measure. But you can't fast the next day with the intention of Ramadan and nobody saw the moon. You have no proof that tomorrow is Ramadan. And likewise, the Imam says, Sum lil-ru'ya waftar lil-ru'ya. Likewise, at the end of Ramadan, this was Sum lil-ru'ya, the beginning of Ramadan. With the end of Ramadan, the same thing applies. The Imams, they used to say, Aftar lil-ru'ya. That means if tomorrow we don't know is Eid or the day after, the Imam, he says, you have no right to aftar, to eat, to consider tomorrow Eid unless you see the moon, unless you witness the moon, or else you consider Ramadan as 30 days. You don't fast. And now, obviously, the next day, the 31st day will be the first day of Shawwal because the lunar month can't be 31 days. It's either 29 or 30. So if it was 30 Ramadan, then automatically the next day will be the first day of Shawwal. So this is the second proof that the ulama refer to. And what the Imam means in these ahadith, what they mean is, they don't mean that you literally have to see it with your own eyes. No. What they mean is that the moon has to reach a stage in which it is visible by the eye. So let's say it's cloudy day. But I know if I move the clouds away, the moon is right there. Everybody could see it. So is tomorrow Eid? Yes. Because the moon is there. Because it's visible, but there is something blocking my view. So the moon has to reach that state in which the light is reaching. Now, if I see that light, I don't see it, that's a different situation. But it has to reach that state in which the light has reached us. Now, here you might come up with a objection to the ulama, a refutation. You might refute this argument of the ulama. And you might say that, look, the Imams lived over 1,000 years ago. So many people, they say this. The Imams lived over 1,000 years ago. So when the Imam was asked, what do we do? He said, if you see it, break your fast. If you see it, fast. The Imam obviously couldn't have told the people, rely on the new moon. Why? Because this is 1,000 years ago. People had no way to tell when the new moon is born. So the only reason the Imam didn't tell them it's the new moon, because there was no technology. But now, in this 21st century, now that we have technology that determines the new moon, we should rely on the new moon. Why go and spot it? Why waste my time and go look for it? Now, you might pose this question. The ulama are aware of this, and they give an answer to this. This is not a correct refutation. The ulama, they say, no, this is wrong. Why? Because when the Imam said you have to see it, it has to be visible before you can break your fast, before you consider the next month beginning, the Imam knew that there is something called the new moon. And even at the time of the Imam, there were astronomers that could predict the new moon to a very accurate degree. Even before Islam, brothers and sisters, astronomers, they could predict the new moon. Even read about it in history. Even the Greeks, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, they had the technology that their astronomers could predict the new moon. Now, the only thing that differs now with all the advancements and telescopes and so on is that now scientists are a little more accurate when it comes to predicting the new moon. How accurate? Like, let's say 1,000 years ago, they could predict it to the minute. Now they could predict it to the second. But that doesn't make a difference. The point is, the Imam could have told the people, go to the astronomers, ask them when the new moon is, and this is the next month. The Imam said, no, you have to see it. It has to be visible. The new moon is not enough. If I consider tomorrow's Eid because of the new moon, I am not following the commands of Allah. This is my own way. This is not the way of Allah. The way of Allah is if the moon is visible. Now, when does that happen, you might ask? When does the moon reach a stage in which it's visible? Some Muslim astronomers, they took the time to figure this out. And this is all calculations. So you'll find maybe the astronomers will differ between each other because it's based on calculations. So the Muslim astronomers, they say that there are 4 criterias that have to be met in order for the moon to be visible. Number 1, the age of the moon. We said that second, that the astronomers call conjunction, when the moon is between the earth and the sun, that's the new moon. And then it begins to drift away. So how long do we have to wait after the new moon until it becomes possible? The astronomers say we have to wait at least 20 hours. At least. Some areas, 25 hours. Some areas, 30. Some areas, 35 hours after the new moon. But at least 20 hours for the moon to be sighted by the eye. This is number 1. I have to make sure this is met. Number 2, the elongation of the moon. And basically the elongation means how far away the moon is from the sun in degrees, west or east. So how far right or left it's from the sun. They say it has to be at least 10 degrees away from the sun. Because it was 0 degrees, it was in one perfect line, and then it starts going away. It has to reach at least 10 degrees. If it's less than that, we won't be able to see it, because the light of the sun will block the light of the moon. So it has to be at least 10 degrees. Number 3, the altitude of the moon, how high it is above the horizon. It has to be at least 8 degrees. And number 4, the lagging time, how long it stays after sunset, or they say it has to be at least 42 minutes. If it's less than that, we won't be able to see it by the eye. If these 4 factors, criteria are met, then it is possible for the human eye to see the moon. We don't have to literally see it. If I know that 100% it's going to be visible, I could rely on that. So these are the 4 criteria that we have to rely on and wait in order to see if the moon will be seen or not. Now, some scholars, they say it doesn't have to be seen by the naked eye. Even telescope is enough. So basically divide these factors by half. So telescope, you don't have to wait 20 hours. Maybe as soon as 10 hours after the new moon, you could see it because it's a telescope. Maybe the elongation, the altitude, and the lagging time, it could all be less strict and you'll able to see the moon. I'll speak about the difference in telescope in a few minutes. So this, brothers and sisters, answers the first question. Now we understand when the Islamic lunar month begins. It's not the new moon. I gave the proofs that the ulama use. It's when the moon becomes visible to us human beings here, when its light reaches earth. This is when the new month begins. This is question 1. Question number 2. Can we rely on science in determining the next month or not? Now, you find many people here, this is what I was talking about in the beginning, they attack the ulama. They say these ulama, they're backwards. They don't rely on science. They're still living in the Stone Ages. They still rely on old methods, witnesses, testimonies. There's science. Why don't you rely on science? This is all a myth, brothers and sisters. There is no alim today. I've never met an alim that does not accept science. All the ulama that live today accept science and rely on science and understand science and understand astronomy. This is a lie. It's a myth that this certain alim that lives in Najaf doesn't accept science, but the other alim that lives in another country does accept. This is a lie. All the ulama accept science. So where's the problem? Then why are we disagreeing? The problem lies elsewhere. Because if you tell me rely on science in determining the new month, then I'll ask you this. I'll ask you, what exactly do you want to rely on from science so that you can tell tomorrow is Eid? What do you want to rely on? What do you want to use to determine? Do you want to use science to determine the new moon? It's either one of two. You want to use science to predict the new moon or to predict the visibility of the moon. Which one is it? If it's number one, I'm using science to predict the new moon, we already understood the answer to that. Yes, science is accurate. Nobody's going to doubt that. No alim is going to say science doesn't understand science. No. Science can predict the new moon to the most accurate degrees. But where's the problem? I mentioned this already. The new moon means nothing in Islam. So what? Let Jibreel right now come down and tell me that the new moon is at this hour. So what? The new moon means nothing in Islam. We said in Islam, the new month begins with the visibility of the moon, not with the new moon. So even if I have figured out the new moon, congratulations, you just wasted your time. It's like I figured out how large for example, ozone is. So what? Does that have to do with siyam, fasting? Does it have to do with Eid? Let's say I figured out how fast an eagle flies. Does that have to do with Eid? No. The new moon has nothing to do with determining if tomorrow is Eid or not. So science is accurate here, but it's useless for us Muslims here. Because Allah's law doesn't have to do with the new moon. So you'll say, fine, I'll use science to predict the visibility of the moon. You said that the new month is when the moon is visible. I'll tell you, bingo, yes. The visibility of the moon, that's what we're looking for. But here, there's another problem. What's that problem? The other problem is that science, when it comes to predicting the visibility of the moon, is not so accurate. And scientists and astronomers themselves, I asked an astronomer once, they themselves admit that when it comes to predicting the visibility of the moon in your area, we can't tell you 100%. We could give you a guess. We could give you an estimate. We can give you an assumption, but something 100%, we can't do that. Why? Because there's so many factors that you have to consider. Remember we said the altitude, the age of the moon, the elongation. You have to take into consideration the lagging time. And the astronomers themselves, they disagree. So we said at least 20 hours. Some astronomers will tell you, no, 18 hours. Others will tell you 22. Others will differ on the altitude, elongation, and lagging time. So because it's based on calculation, on guessing, they'll tell you maybe 60%, 70% you could see, 80% you could see it. But they can't always tell you 100% it's going to be seen. So when he's not giving me a sure answer, how can I rely on him? He tells me maybe it'll be seen. Maybe it's not good enough. I have to know, will it be seen or will it not be seen? So that's the problem with relying with science, brothers and sisters. It's not that the ulama don't accept science. It's because science, when it comes to predicting the visibility of the moon, is not so accurate. There's too many criteria that have to be taken into consideration. But however, the ulama do say that on a personal level, if I have found an astronomer or an organization or an association or a scientist that I trust, and throughout the years, through experience, I saw that he never goes wrong. Anytime he says the moon will be seen, it's seen. Anytime he says it won't be seen, it's not seen. So through experience, I learned that he's accurate, 99%, 100%. On a personal level, the ulama say you can rely on the words of that astronomer in determining Eid and Ramadan. But here, listen carefully, brothers and sisters, this is a delicate point. It's a personal matter. So I can't come and try to enforce what that scientist said on everybody else. No, everybody has to be convinced. If I was convinced, it's personal. I accept it. I can't go and say, why doesn't the marja accept it? Because maybe he wasn't convinced. Maybe according to his understanding and his view of this astronomer, he's not too accurate. So it becomes a matter of opinion. It becomes a matter of personal view, a personal issue. I can rely on that astronomer if I am sure he's 100% right. When he says it will be seen, it will be seen. Or else, I don't rely it. I don't enforce it on other people. So this is, brothers and sisters, and that's why you find some people, they do rely on some sites. Even some ulama. For example, there's a famous site, I believe it's icop.org, something like that. It's very accurate. This is probably my view. Maybe some ulama will tell you, no, it's not accurate. There's another website by the name of moonsighting.com. Maybe you've heard about it. Some scholars rely on this because they see he's accurate. Whatever he says happens. So it's a personal issue here. This is the second question. Question number 3, when the ulama disagree. One alim says Thursday's Eid, the second alim says Friday is Eid. Does that mean they don't trust each other? Why don't they gather and why don't they find a solution? No. Brothers and sisters, when we think like that, we're thinking too shallow. It's not because they don't trust each other, they don't want to sit and work out a solution. The reason why the ulama disagree, number one, because their understanding of the Quran and Hadith differs. One alim understands that in order for the month to be proven, the moon has to be sighted in my area. So if it's seen in Brazil, that's no good for me. That's his understanding of the Quran and the Hadith. You'll find another alim, he'll say, no, if it's spotted anywhere in the world and you share a portion of the world with that place, you can consider tomorrow's Eid. Now, this is not a personal issue. This is a matter of ijtihad. That's his understanding of the Hadith and the Quran. Each one is a mujtahid. Each one has his right to understand his way. So one alim says Thursday because it's, for example, seen in Brazil. The other one says, okay, it was seen in Brazil, but that's for the people of Brazil. For me in Detroit here, that does me no good. It has to be seen in my area. So that's why he considers Eid Friday. It's because of their understanding of the Quran and the Hadith. The first alim says, I understood from the Quran, the Hadith, that the Eid is for the entire world. Or for example, for the portion of the world that share the night. The other one says, no, each place, they have to rely on themselves. They can't rely on another country, a distant country. So this is number one. Number two, I spoke about this, the telescope. Some ulama say you can rely on the telescope. That also goes back to our understanding of the Hadith. Others say you can't rely on the telescope. So let's say it was sighted here in Dearborn with the telescope. The ulama have no disagreement. They respect each other. They accept each other. But one alim says that telescope is not enough. So he's going to say Eid is Friday. The other one says, no, it's enough. So he's going to say Eid is Thursday. So do you understand why there's a difference? Because they differ in their opinions in ijtihad, in the Quran, in the Hadith, in fiqh. It has nothing to do with not trusting each other. Each one is his own. He's an alim. He has the right to give his own view and belief in what he believes in. So that's why they differ. And finally, sometimes you'll find one of them is relying on one astronomer, the other is relying on another. And astronomers within themselves, they disagree. Just a few days ago, I saw an astronomer, a big guy. I asked him about another astronomer, he starts attacking him. No, this guy's not accurate, this guy's wrong. When the astronomers are disagreeing and the ulama go back to the astronomers, they're going to disagree as well. Do you understand? So it's not because they don't trust each other. It's a much more complicated issue. This is number three. And finally, number four, what's the solution? You say, I don't care why there's a difference. I want to have one Eid. Let's say I follow one marja', my wife follows another marja'. My Eid is tomorrow, her Eid is the day after tomorrow. This is a ridiculous Eid. How can we have two Eids? I sit and watch, or I sit and eat, she watches, and the next day it's not my Eid. So what's the solution if I want to have one Eid? What's the solution to this huge problem? Before I give the solutions, 2 points. Number one, brothers and sisters, this isn't even a problem to begin with. So what? Let there be 2 Eids. Let there be 3 Eids. Let there be 4 Eids. So what? Does that mean it's the end of the world? Don't we believe life is a test? Don't we believe there's going to be some hardships in life? If the smallest problem arises, I start going crazy and I attack the ulama. This is my iman. I spoke about this in one of my lectures. Allah sometimes He afflicts us with problems, with tragedies, with tests. He wants to test my faith. Will I be patient or not? Have patience. There's people that sleep, brothers and sisters, every night in Ramadan with an empty stomach, and wallahi they sleep saying Alhamdulillah. Come to the city of Karbala, Imam al-Hussein. My grandfather, Sayyid Murtada Al-Qazwini, he has an orphanage. Thousands of kids, all orphans. Wallahi, you should come and visit their houses. You should see the problems that they have. They live in, I don't know what to call it. It's a shack, it's a box. They don't have a bathroom, they don't have a kitchen. They sleep on the floor, on the soil. All Shia followers of Ahlul Bayt. When you go to them, you see them smiling. They thank Allah for nothing. I mean, they have everything, but they thank Allah for what I consider them that they have nothing. You see them smiling and so happy. You give them the smallest help, the smallest donation, they'll thank you till tomorrow. And I sleep with a full stomach every night. Alhamdulillah, I live the best life. I have no real problems, so I go and I try to make up some problems. I try to create problems. Why do we have 2 Eids? Why? So what? Let there be 2 Eids. The point is I follow Allah. Allah is happy with me. The point isn't that I have 1 Eid or 2 Eids or 3 Eids. So this is number one. Life's a test. It's difficult. First of all, I consider it nothing. I don't even consider it a problem. But for those people that consider it difficult, Let them have patience. Life is difficult. Sometimes there's tests in life. And this is reality. We have to accept it. Let's have patience. Allah will reward us. This is number one. Number two, to those people that say, let's have unity and have one Eid. Brothers and sisters, unity is not one of the goals of humans in life. Read the Quran from cover to cover. You won't find one verse that says our goal is just to unite. Just unite. Unity only gains value if it's what? If we unite on the path of God, on al-haq, if we all unite on the truth. But if we just want to unite, if my goal is just to unite, then let me just go become a Christian. Let me unite with the Christians. Let me unite in worshiping Jesus. Doesn't it make life easier? If the point was to unite, then who cares about my principles? The point is unity. This doesn't make sense. The point is I follow Allah, I please Allah. Even if the whole world doesn't like that, who cares? I please Allah before the whole world. So unity only gains value if it's with the haqq. If it's without the haqq. So if I just want to have one Eid, even if it's not the real Eid, am I a true Muslim? What's the point of this unity? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he tells Ammar, one of his companions, he tells him, Ya Ammar, إِذَا رَأَيْتَ عَلِيًّا قَدْ سَلَكَ وَادِيًا وَسَلَكَ النَّاسُ وَادِيًا غَيْرَهُ فَاسْلُكْ مَعَ عَلِي. He says, if you see the entire world, they go one way, but Imam Ali all by himself, he goes another way. He says, leave the other people alone, abandon the people and follow Imam Ali. Imam Ali is the truth. It's not the people. Even if the entire world unites against Imam Ali, who cares about unity? You have to follow Imam Ali because Imam Ali is with the haqq. People don't always unite on the haqq. People unite on their interests, on their desires. Whatever suits them, whatever makes them comfortable, they will unite on that. So I just go and follow my desires like that. So even if there's no unity, we want unity, yes. But I don't want unity at the price of my principles, at the price of Allah, at the price of my faith. If I could get both, that's good. But if I can't, so be it. So what are the solutions, brothers and sisters? The solutions, number one, let's say if my marja is having the early Eid, let's say Thursday, and my wife's and family's marja is having it Friday. Or I'm sorry, if my marja is having the late Eid and my family is having the early Eid. So Thursday, I don't want to fast. I want to go with them and I want to eat and have breakfast. There's a solution. The solution is travel. And traveling is sometimes even good because if you're still unsure of if it was spotted or not, astronomers differed, whatever, it might be Thursday, it might be Friday. A good idea is to travel. And the distance that you have to travel is just 14 miles outside the limits of your city. So go south towards Toledo, wherever. Count 14 miles outside of Detroit, and you can consider that as travel. But you have to, if you want to do that, you have to leave before Fajr. It's useless if I do it after Fajr, because once Fajr comes, I have to fast if it's not the day of Eid. And once I fasted, then I didn't do ihtiyat. So before Fajr, go, take some food with you, a candy, water. Once you reach that limit, the boundary, 14 miles outside my city, break your fast. And then after the month of Ramadan, make it up. So this is number one. Number two, if let's say I think that my marja' will have the first Eid, and my family's marja' will be the late Eid, and I don't want to have the first Eid, I want to have the late Eid, what do? I don't know. I think my marja' might say it's the first Eid. Do you know what you can do here? This is a solution. Don't even ask what your marja' said when Eid is. Don't ask. Don't ask anybody. Don't ask if the moon was sighted. Just sit in your house, close the door, turn off your cell phone, and sleep. Automatically, we said, remember, if the moon wasn't sighted or if no one told me the moon was sighted, automatically Ramadan becomes 30 days. So automatically Ramadan becomes Friday for me. And if I found out that it was Eid, I had no idea, I had no clue. I don't have to go and search. All the ulama say this, you don't have to search for the moon. You don't have to ask. You don't have to tell other people the moon was spotted or not. If there's a solution practical for you, do it. If not, then travel. And subhanAllah, who are the people that usually make the commotion about Eid? It's the ones that their alim says your Eid is the second day. You see, the ones that have the first Eid never complain because they're happy. Because this fatwa conforms to their desires. As long as my desires are fed, eat earlier, I'm okay with that. I spoke about this a few nights. Some people that they want faith to be with their desires. As long as I'm happy, comfortable, then I am okay with faith. That's why you never see them complain about the ulama and backwards, because he has the first Eid. It's always the ones that have the second Eid. So here, it's not a matter of principles. It's a matter of what? A race. I want to eat before my friends. I want to eat before them. How come they get to eat before me? So this is the second solution. We said number one, travel. Number two, we said you don't even have to ask. And brothers and sisters, finally, and I'll end with this. This is definitely not a solution. Changing my taqleed. Some people, Sistani says it's Friday. The other marja' says it's Thursday. Hey, let me change my taqleed. I try to outsmart Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is going to ask me, why did you follow Sistani to begin with? Wasn't it because you thought he was the most knowledgeable? Why did you follow any marja'? It's because I thought he's the most knowledgeable. So now, just because the other alim, he says Eid is one day earlier, I'm going to abandon my marja' and I'm going to go just because I want to eat, because for my stomach. For 29 days, I fasted for Allah, trying to gain what? Piety. Trying to get close to Allah. Do I want to destroy that just for one day? Destroy all my work for 29 days? It's not a race, brothers and sisters, whoever could eat first. The point is to please Allah. Even if we have to fast 31 days, 30, who cares? The point is I please Allah. So I can't change my taqleed just because I want to eat one day sooner. This is playing a game with Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that I'm fooling him. That I just change my taqleed because I want to eat faster. This is the wrong solution. So brothers and sisters, sometimes it's hard, and sometimes there are some things in life that may be difficult, but life is a test. We have to have patience. So now that we have a better understanding of the Islamic lunar month and why the ulama disagree, next time, before we criticize the ulama, we have to have patience and we have to first seek knowledge. Anytime you hear something you don't understand, I said this many times, don't criticize, don't reject. Say, I'm an ignorant human being. Seek knowledge. If you did try to seek knowledge, in the end you couldn't find out, maybe. Then you could say, okay, you could criticize. But if I haven't studied why the ulama differ, it's a much more complicated issue than we think. The ulama write 10 volumes on this issue, the issue of the hilal. We want to finish it, we want to summarize it in one sentence. This alim is backwards because he doesn't rely on science. That's not how life is, that's not how the ulama are. Brothers and sisters, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your a'mal. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the help so that we stay with our principles, that we stay firm on our principles, even if it means that we're going to be disunited. But this is the ramification of the ghaiba of the Imam. We read every day in Dua al-Iftitah, what do we read? Allahumma inna nashku ilayka ghaibatan faqda nabiyyina wa ghaibata waliyina. Oh Allah, we complain to you the fact that we lost our Prophet and our Imam isn't here. The Imam isn't here. If he was here, we would all be united under one leader. There'd be Eid. But because our Imam isn't here, that's the price that we pay. We have many leaders. We have different ulama. And that's the price that we have to pay. So that's why, do dua so that the Imam does appear and we all have one beautiful Eid. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts all our a'mal. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.